Family Chats. I am your host, Maureen. I am with my co-host, Amanda.
Hello.
And today, I'm really excited to announce we have our very special guest, Taryn Dryfhout.
Hi.
She has authored some Gilmore books, and we are going to talk with her about that and pick her brain a little bit. How are you doing today, Taryn?
Good. Yep. I look forward to my brain being picked.
Well, good.
Do you have one, Amanda? Do you have a question you want to start with?
No, you start, and then I'll flow in.
All right. So I was looking up some of your books, and you have 3 about Gilmore. And I
have 2 out and another one on the go. So 2 published, a 3rd to come.
Okay. Can you tell us now? The first one you published is You've Been Gilmored, right?
Yes. Yep.
Can you tell us what that book's about?
Yes. So You've Been Gilmored is an encyclopedia of everything on the show that all the fans try to mine out. So it's just enormous lists of episodes, all the music, all the movies, all the TV shows, all the books, everything that they ate on the show, menus for every restaurant that was on the show, all of Kirk's jobs, all of Emily's maids. It's just absolutely everything that I could put into some kind of list or category. It's got a list of every character on the show, even the ones that you might not see but you've heard about, like Al. People who played actors who played multiple characters on the show. I don't think I've really left much out at all. It's it's just trying to categorize everything about the Gilmore Girl world into a massive book.
Okay. And what was your inspiration behind doing that?
Well, it started really as like a personal project because there wasn't anything like that around. And I used to, like a lot of fans, use the internet a lot to try and find different lists of things. And I started finding that things like the book lists weren't complete. There'd be, there's hundreds of Rory's book lists or Gilmore Girls book lists on the internet, but none of them seemed to have everything. They'd all be missing stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of started with a movie list. I joined a Goodreads Rory book club group or forum, and I decided for the forum I was going to make the most complete movie list that had ever been done with where that movie was referenced. So I wrote the movie guide and then I published it in the forum, and it was really popular. And people started asking me if I could do one for TV shows and if I could do one for other things. So the original inception was a website. I was going to do kind of like a Wikia type thing, but try and make it the most exhaustive that there was. And then I thought, what I'd really, really like myself would be a book that has all this in it. And so I just thought, I'm going to write one because I want one. I'm going to write it because I would like this kind of book in my house so that I can look things up and they're all in one place. And as I started telling people about what I was working on, people became more and more interested in having a copy themselves. And so then I just kind of started marketing it as a book that was coming up soon. And I thought, if anybody else wants to buy it, that would be cool. And I think before I published, I sort of said to my husband, it'd be great if I sold like a couple of 100 copies. And it sold like hotcakes. I sold more than that on the first day. It was just insane. The market for it was enormous, and I didn't realize when I was writing it what it was going to become.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
So is the whole thing in list format, or did you also write some intros into the list? Is there also some like laid out like a chapter book, or is it all in list format?
No, it's got my writing as well. So it's got the contents page spans something like 12 pages at the start, and that breaks down exactly what's going to be in there. And then everything is put into sections. And then I've kind of written a few pages at the start of each section about why this section was important, like for something like movies. I talked a bit about why there's so many movies in Gilmore Girls and why it's important that they're there and why it's important that we understand those references and what it brings to the show. And so I kind of did that for each thing. Even the more silly sections, there's like some sort of lists in there, like there's an episode where Luke has a big rant about Paul Anka and all the things he doesn't like about dogs. And so I put a list in there of all the reasons Luke doesn't like dogs. And so, there's kind of funny, quirky things in there as well. But I think all of them are important. And so, I have had a few comments that it's just a book of lists, but I put a lot of my writing and myself into it as well, and thought a lot about what makes the show what it is and why all these elements kind of bring it together. So it's a bit of a mix, yeah.
Yeah. What kind of research was involved to this? I mean, this sounds pretty extensive.
It was. It took me a little over 2.5 years.
Wow.
Wow.
And that was just from the time I started actually writing it. So I guess there was probably about 6 months before that where I was working with the movie list and the idea of a website. So probably about 3 years from start to finish. And the main research was just watching the show over and over and over and over and over. So the main reason I had to watch it so many times was not even to try and pick everything up, but because I kept expanding what I wanted in the book. Mm-hmm. So initially it was just, I'm just going to try and get the most exhaustive list I can of the music and the movies and those things you can find on the internet, but which weren't really complete. But then as I was watching it, I might get kind of into season 3 or 4 and think, it would be great to put a list of like all the menus for all the, because, sometimes you can see things in the background and they're talked about, but they're there. And I think I was on about my 7th rewatch when I decided that I wanted to write down all of the academic activities that Rory had ever done, to do kind of like an academic bucket list. If you want to be like Rory, then you're going to, work on the school paper in high school. And, so every time I got to a point where I wanted something else, I had to go right back to the start and watch the whole series again. So it was a good couple of years of watching the show, and not just watching it in the background or having it on, but sitting there with pen and paper and concentrating, a lot of pausing and rewinding. Mainly watching the show. Also a lot of reading about the show. There's quite a few scholarly books which have like critical views of the show in terms of their the themes. So
I didn't know that.
A lot of, there's probably, I think I read 4 or 5 that have like more academic essays on the show. There's also a few academic papers out there on the internet. People have looked at the show in light of various things. So trying to get a feel for what the show is, and then I brought a little bit of that sort of, I am an academic, and so I brought a little bit of that scholarly material into the introductions, why things worked for the show and why they're there. And then I guess just, the internet was my first place to start. So with things like the book lists, there was probably a little bit of time where I was just getting a feel for what information was out there and what gaps there were, and trying to kind of fill those. So it was kind of an isolating, lonely sort of task, because nobody could help me with it. It was long, but it was really worth it now that it's done and I've seen the final product. I'm glad I went there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. Well, I saw that I didn't know that you had written a companion to that book. And I got really, because I just found that out today, that you wrote the companion to You've Been Gilmored. And so I'm really excited to pick up that.
Yes.
Because that's like, it said that was like a workbook. Right? It's kind of, it's a smaller version. So it's not really something you could buy instead. But it's designed on different paper, which is more writable, and it's got a lot of places for notes and checklists. So some of the major lists that are in the encyclopedia, like the things that all the fans want to go through. We want to watch all the movies, we want to read all the books. And if you want to kind of work through those lists, then the companion is the book to buy, because it's got all the major lists, but it's got a place for you to check off, write some notes about, how the book was or how it went reading through the list, things like that. But there's nothing in there that you wouldn't work through. So there's tons of lists in the main book, which don't feature in the companion, because you can't like eat your way through Al's Pancake World. Yes. I'm not sure I would want to either.
Yeah, a bit dicey.
Sort of debatable. So
So, I mean, any Gilmore fan would love the opportunity to just have an excuse of, well, I have to watch Gilmore Girls. I'm doing this thing, so I have to watch Gilmore Girls. But how many times would you say you actually watched Gilmore Girls in the pursuit of writing this book?
I think I had to go through it about 10 times in the space of 2 years just for the book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a lot because I kept missing things too. You think you're concentrating and then
They talk
they do talk fast. But sometimes I'd see something online and I'd think, is that book in there? I don't think I've got that. And then when I check my list, I wouldn't. So I'm like, okay, I need to do it again because I obviously didn't get everything the first time. And, I really only wanted to do it once and do it right. And if you're claiming that you have the exhaustive encyclopedia, then it has to.
You better
not
have the
miss
exhaustive
anything.
encyclopedia.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it had to be good. And it was a long time because I think I started talking very early to people about what I was doing. So it was a long wait for some people that wanted to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just didn't want to put out something that wasn't what it says it was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that you made any converts to Gilmore Girls while you're doing this? Because I mean, for me, when I'm watching Gilmore Girls, I can't help but talk about it to everybody. Because I go through a rewatch every year and have for the last 21 years. But when I'm watching it, I can't not talk about it.
Yeah.
Did that happen with you?
I don't know if I've made any converts from the book, but I definitely try to convert people in my daily life. I mean, now that I've written a book about it too, a lot of people find out what I have done. And so it becomes a topic of conversation, why that show? Why was that one worthy of writing a book? And so that's an opportunity for me to tell them all about why it's so wonderful. But yeah, I'm not sure if I've converted anybody from the book, but you never know.
What about during your rewatches? Did you happen to have people who would come over while you're watching it and you just start talking about it, or they start watching it with you because it's on and they start to like it on their own?
Well, I converted my family during the rewatches because I think the first time through I watched the whole thing with my husband, who was, kind of watching it a bit more casually than I was. And then when I rewatched other times, he never wanted anything to do with it. But my son, who's almost 14 now, started watching it with me during one of the book rewatches and loved it. And he ended up kind of sitting down for the first couple just because he was having his lunch or something, but then sat down and watched the whole thing right through to A Year in the Life with me. And he is definitely a fan now. And my daughter, who is 10, kind of watched it a little bit, but, she would have been 7 or 8 when I was watching, and I think she remembers enough. She didn't engage with it at the time, but she remembers now, and she quite often says to me that we should start again and watch it together, because I think she's just remembering little things and thinking, now I'm older, I think I might like that show I didn't really take too much notice of.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely getting all my kids on board. Raising them right.
I have all girls, so that's I've always loved Gilmore Girls, but now it holds I'm almost putting not pressure, but there's this greater desire to watch this with all of my daughters. So I have a 10-year-old now. She's going to be 11 soon, and she's only watched through season 4, but she just had her last day of school, but usually on the weekend she'd say, Mom, can I make some coffee? Can we watch Gilmore Girls? So I bought her decaf coffee that she can have while we watch Gilmore Girls, and it's her favorite thing.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, yeah, that's so sweet.
Yeah, I have a friend too who I started discussing with it, and her son is graduating high school this year, and she got him addicted to it. She got her husband addicted to it. So it's like the ripple effect. If we just tell one person, the show is going to speak for itself once they turn it on. I mean,
exactly.
You don't say much more.
Yeah.
It's funny actually because being in New Zealand, there's not always a lot of Gilmore Girls type things for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
But about a month ago, one of the stores here, do you guys have Cotton On?
No.
Okay, it's like a chain clothing store for younger people.
Yeah.
Younger than me, not children, but young women. And it's not somewhere I normally go into a lot, but they just did a great big line last month of Yale clothing. The track pants and the kind of things that Rory had on.
Mm-hmm.
And my 13-year-old went nuts and made me buy him everything because Rory had it on. So I was already kind of starting to see how much that had impacted him. And he talks a lot about college now, which is not something he talked about a lot. I think he thought he would go to university, but now it's definitely become a deeper part of his thinking. And I think Gilmore Girls has had a really positive effect in that respect.
What a great story that is.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't hear a lot about that. Usually it's just about how great Gilmore is, but you don't think about what the impact is having on the younger generation that's watching it. I mean, I'm almost 40, so I don't think about that.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Or just the excitement over the Yale gear made me realize how much it had really touched him more than he's maybe said.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
Yes.
What was the hardest part about writing this first book?
Oh gosh, I think just the scope of it. Going back to watching it and then realizing I wanted to add something else. There was a long time where it just kept growing and growing. And I think about 1.5 years in, I got to the point where I started thinking maybe this would never be complete because, while I was working on it, A Year in the Life came out. And so then I thought, well, obviously I'm going to include that now.
Yeah.
And then people were sort of, there's always rumors about whether there's going to be more. And I started thinking, maybe I should wait, if another revival comes out, I don't want to publish this book and it's not complete. And because I kept finding things even in the original show when I was going through it, I just started wondering if there would ever be a point where I would feel that it was finished. So when I got to the point where nothing else looked like it was coming out, I'd watched it once over again and had not found anything I'd missed or come up with any other ideas. That was the first time I really thought, this is doable. I'm actually going to be able to finish this because up until that point, it was just this crazy increasing pile, of lists. I mean, as I was finishing each section, I was printing it out and putting it on the desk and, it was just mounding.
Oh, wow.
And of course, every rewatch, I'd find something else. And so I think just at the time, maybe the idea that this would never be able to actually be a complete thing, that I was never going to stop running out of new ideas or finding new things. So it was a big relief, I think, when I realized, this can be done. There is an end point to this and it is going to be something. Yes. Otherwise, it's just a huge amount of papers on your desk.
Which is intimidating in itself.
Yeah.
But it could be like the Oxford Dictionary that Rory loved. You could just every year come up with a new edition, or every few years. Oh my gosh, every year. Can you imagine doing this every year?
Probably not every year, but if they came out with any new episodes, I would definitely add them and do a new edition, I think, because as I say, I want it to be complete and I want it to be exhaustive. And I've had really weird feedback because there's been the odd person who's just a hater about A Year in the Life, who has said, you should not have included that. It's not part of Gilmore Girls. And that seems really weird to me because if I'm going to do it and it's going to be exhaustive, it's got to be all of it, whether we liked it or not. It never occurred to me to not have A Year in the Life in there, but some people have complained about that.
Yeah. See, we just did our first Gilmore Girl podcast and it went out on Wednesday, and I am not a fan of A Year in the Life, but I mentioned in there that I will watch it every time I do a rewatch because it is Gilmore Girls. Even though I don't particularly like it, it's still Gilmore. It's still Amy Sherman Palladino. I got to watch it.
Yeah, same. I would never do a rewatch without, I would just feel unfinished. But then I know there's people who don't even watch season 7, who finish at season 6 and go back. And so, I mean, I guess everybody does it differently, but it's out there. It's part of Gilmore Girls now. So whether we like it or not, it's in the book.
Exactly.
It has to be included in the rewatch.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Especially since it's a triumphant return and it's something that we waited so long for. I mean, how long did we cry for a new edition, for them to come back? And it's, 10 years. I think even if it wasn't great, even if you didn't like it, you waited for this for 10 years. How can you just ignore it now?
Yeah.
And even if you don't like some of the bigger things, I know people have a problem with Rory not being where they thought she would be in life and that kind of thing. There's also some really wonderful stuff we wouldn't have gotten. We wouldn't have gotten Kirk's little pig and, the secret bar. And, there's still a lot to love. I actually loved Pretty much all of it. I'm a big convert to A Year in the Life. I don't have too many unkind things to say about it, but I can see where people are coming from. But I think, if we never got it, like that just would have been sad, wouldn't it? That we never got any more Gilmore Girls, that was it. And and it also brought Gilmore Girls into our era, rather than being something that happened 20 years ago. It had cell phones and I don't know, it was nice to see the girls in a different time period. I think I will always be happy that it happened.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Me definitely too.
Yeah.
I'm real happy that I don't know. I know, Maureen, you don't really like it. I love A Year in the Life. I like it just because it's almost like a reunion. It's like, I don't know. It made me cry. Just happiness. Just like I was earlier today with the Friends reunion.
Oh, yeah.
I cried over that. I cried through the whole entire thing. But A Year in the Life, it's kind of like the same thing, but it's longer. It's even better.
It's 4 hours. So, I mean, I think the only thing I didn't like about it, and I think if it was separate, I would like it, but it wasn't Gilmore Girls to me because it wasn't canon Gilmore Girls. So it was hard for me to wrap my head around that because I'm a very stubborn person. So I wanted what I wanted, how I wanted it. And I'm not even, so it's like there's this quote from The Office where, I don't know if you've ever seen the American version of The Office, but Ryan Howard says, I want to be led, but like lead me when I'm in the mood to be led, like that's how I was with the revival. It's just, I want how I want it. But Amy Sherman Palladino is much smarter than I am, so I got to give that to her. So, did you learn any new or surprising things while you're doing your research for this book?
Oh, new or surprising.
Or something that you might have caught in one of your rewatches that you didn't originally catch when you watched the series without writing the book?
Oh gosh, that's a good question.
There's been so much information over the past 3 years.
Yeah, I've got to think. I think I did, but they were kind of smaller things. I guess I just noticed things I wouldn't have noticed. Like things like in the background. When I came to do the menus, some of them were things that we had been told. Like I did a list of the Friday night dinners because usually somebody would say what they were eating. So that was there. But then there were other ones like, there's a scene where they've come back from Friday night dinner and Lorelai has stopped to get coffee or takeaways or something at this kind of little hole in the wall that we've never seen. But if you pause it, it's this place called Dino's and there's a whole menu there and you can read all the food they serve. And so that kind of thing got transcribed into the book. And it's just the kind of thing that I'd never noticed until I was specifically, pausing to look for food places.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of Stars Hollow businesses as well that are not on any of the online lists, but they're in the book because they'll just be something that people walked past. And it's not the usual things like, the Cat Club and the video store.
Yeah.
There'll be, like there's a one that's like Nancy's Calico Cottage or Calico World or something. And they walk past it 3 or 4 times, but it's in the background and we're not supposed to see it. So the businesses list of Stars Hollow is much longer than any I've ever seen because I didn't just put in ones that were mentioned. I put in every one that you could see. Or if somebody came home and they'd been shopping in Stars Hollow and they had a bag with a name on it, that went into the list. And so, there was a lot of little things that I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't been looking for specific things to make the book.
Mm-hmm.
But there was nothing really shocking. I mean, I don't think there were any little storylines that I just had never noticed. But it was definitely eye-opening as well to look at some of the scholarly material that's been written on the show because there's a lot of different perspectives on how things like feminism play out, how, familial relationships play out on the show. Somebody's done like a queer reading of the show, things like that. There's all different kinds of things that I guess I'd never thought of that are actually there. Somebody wrote about religion on the show and how that plays out in terms of, Lorelai is like Mary is my homegirl shirt and things like that, we don't really think about, but actually there are certain elements like religion that are there in the show, but they're not the focus. But, if one person kind of takes it and looks at how that all works, there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I think I could write like books and books forever about all the different things that are in this. The show is so packed, it's just crazy.
Could you do that, please?
Oh, see how I go for time.
I will buy those books from you. I'm just writing down the note about the academic papers because I never thought to look for that before.
If you want to Google Scholar or a database or something, there's quite a few have been written. Actually, in my upcoming book, I've got fan stories, and one of them is coming from 2 women who have done their university postgraduate work on Gilmore Girls.
Oh, wow.
And I won't give too much away about what they actually looked at, but their thesis is going to be contributing to the new book. So there's definitely like another little subset of people who are so interested in it that it's become, life's research for them.
Yeah. I mean, if you look on Facebook, like the number of groups, our group alone has almost 6,000 members in our Gilmore group. But I don't think you can find a Gilmore group on Facebook that is under 1,000 members.
Yeah, I know there's a lot.
And a lot of fans.
And that's a worldwide thing. So I mean, it's very rare that there's a show that translates worldwide, but also generationally. And
yes,
this show does that. I mean, I've been watching it for 21 years, and my 10-year-old daughter is now like, I love this show. And so it runs the test of time in every way that you look at it.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's awesome.
It does.
Can you talk to us about the process to get it to print?
About the actual publication?
Yeah, about how you went from thought to actually printing. Were you self-published, or do you have a publisher that has done this for you?
This first one I self-published because I didn't know anybody would want to buy it.
Yeah.
So I put it up on Amazon, and the idea was kind of just that I would just order one for myself, and maybe one for my mother, and then I put it on because I have an author page because I've been a freelance writer before this, and so I kind of stuck it up on there in the months coming, and there's a little bit of interest about buying it. Like maybe, I don't know, I maybe had a couple of hundred people like the page and start following the updates. And I thought, okay, there are a few people that are going to want it as well. So I put it up on Amazon, and it just went berserk. I don't even know how else to explain it. Like, it just exploded beyond anything I could have ever imagined. And it just became so popular. And now I think I probably won't self-publish the next one, only because the self-publishing process on Amazon was really complicated. It took me a long time to work out how to do it, because you have to, everything has to be specified to their requirements in terms of page size, your margins, what size the text can be, what the cover can look like, and that was just a lot of stuff I'm not particularly interested in learning, but I had to learn to do it.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, was that I had like a very small fan base before that, and I don't think anybody hugely believed in the project apart from me. Things are a little bit different now, and my new book, I think probably I'll try to get it published through a traditional publishing house, because I think the audience is there, and it's a little bit of a higher caliber, just in terms of it not being lists. It's it's real writing, and yeah.
Let's talk about that new book. No, that one's called But I'm a Gilmore, right?
Yes.
What is the story behind that title?
Okay, so the original inception for the book is kind of why I gave it that title. It's changed a little bit since then. So when I put out this book and I realized it was, something that people wanted. I mean, not even just my book, but Gilmore Girl books are popular. Mm-hmm. People want them. And I get that because I have all of them as well. And I think Gilmore Girl people tend to be book people, which, so it all works. So not long after I put this one out, I announced that I wanted to do a fan book, because originally in this book, I wanted to put fan stories about what the show meant to people. And it just, I've got it sitting here, it just became so enormous that I couldn't put anything else in it. So then I decided I might do a fan book on its own. And I started asking people to send in their stories of what the show meant to them. And I got a lot of submissions. And then when I was starting to put it together, I had a cast member contact me and say, are you going to involve any cast members? And I said, well, I wasn't kind of expecting to, but you know, if you want to be involved, then absolutely. And she was really wonderful at putting me in contact with a few others, and it kind of snowballed. And I've now interviewed more than 40 cast and crew for the show.
Wow.
And I've got about 60 fan stories. And I've also got quite a few people, I think about 15 or so, who are creators of some kind, and their creations come from Gilmore Girls. So people like Marcus and Jenny, who run the Fan Fest, Christy Kelly, who wrote the cookbooks, bloggers, people who have Instagram accounts, that kind of thing. So I'm still in the process, but the book, I think, will probably take shape in 3 sections now. So the first is going to be cast and crew and the experiences of the people who worked on the show. The second will be creators, and that'll be people whose experiences have been shaped by the show in terms of some sort of business or hobby. And then the third is going to be the fans and how the show impacted their personal lives. So it's coming together to be this really big book of Gilmores and their story, right from the people who are in it through to the people who are watching it. And it's kind of coming together beautifully in a real cohesion, because a lot of the things that are coming out of the cast and crew interviews are the same kinds of things that are coming out in the fan interviews or the fan stories.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you've got the cast and crew saying that this film set was like no other because there was such a sense of community. And then you've got the fans saying how this show's brought them together into the sense of community. And so it's really much more than I ever expected it to be. I thought it would be a really small book of kind of anecdotes from fans. Some of the things you see on Facebook sometimes about what the show means to people, a little bit more expanded, but it's become a real work that I'm really proud of. And so I think I probably will try to get it published, and I think it probably will, because it's a lot higher quality than I was hoping for, and it's really coming together beautifully.
How
Such
how
an original
close?
idea.
Yeah, absolutely. How close would you say it is to being done, do you think?
I'm just finishing up with cast and crew interviews now. The reason it's taken a lot longer is not only the size of it, but I have to work around people who are in the film industry, who are busy, who are trying to squeeze me in between projects. And the other difficulty has been reaching cast and crew, making sure that everybody knows about it. And, you know, a few people have declined, and that's okay, because I know now that they don't want to do it. But there's been some people where I've tried to communicate. It's not clear if they've known about it. And, you know, I've been hesitant to close it off if I think there's somebody who wants to be included.
Yeah.
So I'm almost at the end of interviewing. I think I've got my last ones booked for June, but I kind of don't want to put a date on it in case somebody comes back in July when I'm starting to put it together and says, oh, I've just seen your email and I do want to be in. And, you know, so I won't close it off until I'm pretty sure that everybody's seen it and either wants in or doesn't want in. But I'm hoping it should be finalized around the end of the year and coming out in early 2022.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's smart. It's the same thing with like your first book. You don't want to put it out unless it's actually complete.
Exactly.
I mean, what would be the point?
Exactly. And there's just no point in rushing something like this, especially when you're working with other people's material, because you know, you want to do it justice, and I don't want to be rushing interviews, and I don't want to be rushing the writing of it. I want to make sure that it's good and that it tells people's stories.
And that's the other thing too, is that you have to be, I mean, you're being considerate that these aren't just your stories that you're telling. You're telling everyone else's stories as well as partly your own, and so there's a balance so that you have to walk of being respectful of their narrative but also putting yours in there.
Yeah, exactly. And some of the stories are really sensitive. You know, there's stories in there about people who watched Gilmore Girls with their mother as they slowly passed away in hospice, and there's a soldier in there who discovered Gilmore Girls while she was posted in at war. You know, so it's not material that you want to kind of skim over. You know, you want to give it the time that it needs and make sure that people's stories are told in a meaningful way, and not just for entertainment, but, you know, what are these, how has Gilmore Girls actually meant something to these people?
Yeah.
Because as you know, as fans, Gilmore Girls is so much more than a show.
Yeah.
And so,
Yes.
it just needs the time it needs, basically.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever talked to a true Gilmore fan who didn't have a very passionate opinion about a character. Because
Yes,
they're not just characters to us anymore. We've binge watched this show so many times that they're real people to us.
exactly. Yeah. And it's a real world to us, and
Yeah.
one we've engaged in over and over and over.
Yeah. I'm the one who in our group, when there's, because I've watched it so many times. I've probably watched each episode about, well, for as long as it's been on. Like season 7, I've watched at minimum 10 times, season 8, 11, season 12, or, you know, so on and so on. And so when people ask questions or there's a debate, I get very, very wordy because I have a lot of things to say. I've thought a lot about this, and I have very, very firm ideas and opinions about these characters and the way Stars Hollow would live. And I think that's part of my issue with The Year in Life, is because I feel very possessive over the characters, because
Yeah.
they wrote it so well that you connect with them so completely and so intimately that they belong to you now.
Yeah, and you've invested years of your life into
Yeah.
these people. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I get it.
So I'm curious, who was the first cast member that reached out to you?
Oh,
Did you do that?
you can probably guess it was Valerie Campbell. She is the woman who keeps everybody together. She was the costumer,
Oh,
one of the costumers. But she has an amazing story because, I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but she very much keeps everybody together. She holds regular parties where she serves ice cream and tries to get everybody back. And I mean, if there's been kind of small reunions outside of the show, they've usually been you know, at her place as a result of her putting something together. And she's very, very connected in terms of keeping a lot of her friendships going. So she sort of, she propelled the cast and crew section forward, really. I really owe a lot to her. And then, you know, after she gave me quite a few connections, then usually if I spoke to somebody on an interview, you know, if it was going well, they'd usually say, hey, you know, have you spoken to this person? Because, you know, her and I are still great friends and I could ask for you. And it's definitely been the relationships that have been able to make those connections for me, because sometimes I've already asked and they haven't wanted to, or they haven't answered. And then when a friend says, oh, you know, I talked to Taryn and it was fine, you should do it.
yeah.
It's all come to fruition. So
Gives you
it's been a long
credibility.
process. Yeah, it's been a long process trying to make relationships. And you know, I think people were a little bit hesitant at the start. I guess when you're writing a book about a Hollywood show, the fear is always that you're digging for dirt, you know, that you might want to write a book of dirty little secrets about what went on in Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
And you know, so just trying to reassure people, I guess, that, you know, you're looking for the really warm stories. You're trying to put together a really nice collection of what the show means to people. And, you know, so I guess as I've had more and more interviews, it's been a little bit easier to get interviews because people have realized what this is and what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
That makes sense. And now your first book came out in June of 2020, is that right?
Yeah, it's almost a year. Next week it'll be a year.
So when did you start writing the second book, But I'm a Gilmore? When did you start writing that?
I think around August. Almost right away. Well, yeah, around August, I think I conceived of the idea. And then shortly afterwards, I did a call on my author page for stories. And some of those came quite long and put together. And some of them were people who sort of sent a little note and said, this is my story, but I'm not sure if I can put it down. And so we'd organize interviews and try and sort of get it down. And I'm still taking stories. I mean, I initially, I think, had put quite a short deadline on it because, as I say, I thought it would come together really quick, just be a really small book of fan stories. But because it's become so much larger and I'm still working on it, I still sometimes get an email saying, are you still taking one? Because, you know, I've been wanting to write it and I haven't had time or I haven't known how. Because there's sensitive topics too. Some people have found it difficult to put those kind of things into words, even into an email explaining what their story is. So yeah, I've been working on it since around August. But yeah, I think it'll be about 1.5 years, hopefully, by the time it's complete.
Yeah. And again, that's a lot of work. I mean, I think that someone might look at that and say, well, she's being sent stories, but there's a lot of your time and your work and your words and your finesse really that you have to put into writing this piece.
Yeah, because I mean, no story, well, I don't think any stories at this stage will go in exactly how they were sent to me. The interviews with the cast and crew are almost exclusively interviews which I'm going to shape into stories. And then the fan stories, you know, I still need to make sure that they're cohesive, that they, you know, that they fit the shape of the book I'm trying to put together. And for some fans, it's also just been interviews, and I'm trying to kind of piece together what this story is. So, you know, there's definitely a lot of writing and editing work to come, which I haven't started too much of because I'm still interviewing. But yeah, no, it's there's a lot of work still ahead.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, you need it to be readable, so it has to flow together, and all the pieces have to connect, and that's on you to make it do that. No pressure, but I mean, that's on you to make it do that.
Exactly.
So are there any snippets that you could tease us with about this book?
Oh, snippets.
Mm.
Oh gosh, let me think. I feel like I've given you a few.
We want more,
like
Taryn. We need more.
With a little snippet. Sorry?
I said we need more.
Oh, I see. Okay. I'll leave you with. I'll give you this little. There's a story about Sally Struthers and a chicken and a microwave. That's all I'm going to give you.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to read that story.
That's a good one.
Chicken, like a live chicken.
I don't know if I need to hear anymore to know that that's going to be a great story.
That's going to be a great story. I can't wait to read it.
Well, I'm smiling, so you don't have to be horrified.
It's true. And I don't think Sally Struthers would really do anything terrible. Embarrassing, for sure, I think. That's the way I think that was going to go. Without giving any details that will take away from what's in your book, what was your favorite or most insightful interview?
Oh,
those might be two different things even.
There's been a lot of, actually every interview's been wonderful. Every interview has exceeded my expectations, but there's been a few standouts. I think in terms of maybe not the material also, but in terms of my interview experience, the standout was talking to Edwin Herman's daughter, Ryan, who talked about growing up on the show. And it was really a really emotional interview to be a part of. I really am so grateful to her for being so open and talking about not only her father, but her own experience. She was on an episode in the later seasons, and there was some really surprising details came out of that interview. Probably the most surprising to me, and I'm not actually sure anybody really knows this, is that Edward Herman used to talk a lot to Amy Sherman-Palladino about things that were going on in Ryan's life, because she was around the same age as Rory when the show was running. And some of the experiences for Ryan come out in Rory's character. And when Ryan was watching the episodes growing up, she would sit there sometimes and not know, and then watch an episode and just be like, oh my gosh, that was me last week. That's what happened to me at school or with, a friend or, and so the interview just took this amazing form because so much of her life and adolescence is embedded in the show, as well as her father and her own role on it. So that was a really, really moving interview. Difficult at times emotionally, but it was really amazing, and I felt really, really honored to be able to take it, even outside of the scope of the book, even just as a fan, to be able to sit there and talk to her about those things. And
what a beautiful memory to have of your. That makes me a little emotional. But what a beautiful memory to have of her father. That's almost like. It's hard. For my dad and I, it was hard for us to connect on that sort of level. But for Edward Herman to talk to Amy Sherman-Palladino, it's almost like Amy Sherman-Palladino was talking to Ryan. So it's like he
Yeah.
found a way to connect with his daughter and help her through these things that as a guy, he probably couldn't have really helped her the way he wanted to. So what a beautiful memory for her to have of her dad.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
talked a lot about even being able to watch him now because so much of him is so similar to his character, and talked about being able to show her children, you know, what Granddad was like. And it was really an amazing interview. It was really it was unexpected that I would ever get to experience that. And she's really just a wonderful human being. It was she's a great person. It was a really great interview.
Wow. That's I love that. I'm amazed by that one. I can't wait to read that one actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about was there a fan interview that you had that was particularly surprising, or one that really just kind of tickled you? It was kind of insightful.
I actually think the one I most enjoyed was the college study, only because I talked a little bit in my introduction of my first book about how I started watching Gilmore Girls a little bit later, not when it was on, but when I was in my early 20s and I was in college. And I already had a family by then, so I wasn't kind of like exactly a Rory, but I found Rory's character and her passion for academics really formative in those years where I was trying to find my way in academics.
Mm-hmm.
And in those early years, all I wanted to do was try to find a way to integrate Gilmore Girls into my study life. You know, I considered doing my master's on some sort of Gilmore Girls topic. I considered doing a exchange to Yale. You know, so I was like a little bit green with envy when they had found a way to do it. And I guess if I'd pushed a little bit harder I would have too, but around that time was when I started thinking about this book, and so I sort of my passion over in that direction. But it was really interesting to me to see somebody had done it and at postgraduate level, and it was finished, and they'd found really interesting results which contribute to the world of academic material. And so that was really cool. I really loved that somebody had done what I was thinking about doing and just ran with it.
It's awesome. Now,
Nice.
did I read right that you are you studying to get another degree, or are you a professor at a university?
That's a complicated question with a complicated answer. So I have my master's degree and I'm currently working on my PhD.
Oh, wow.
So I'm almost halfway. But I do also tutor and lecture a little bit at the local college here. So it's, a bit of everything. I like to get my foot in multiple doors, clearly.
That makes absolute sense. Just talking with you, that makes total sense. And it's beneficial. So that's good.
Yeah, I like to be busy.
So same sort of question with the first book. What was the hardest or most challenging thing about writing this second book that you found so far? Because you're not done yet, but that you found so far.
I think mainly actually the demands of interviews in terms of my time. Interviewing is really time intensive because you need 1 or 2 hours to do the interview, and then as you guys know, then you need a few hours to go through the material and get it ready. And I guess with the first book, as well as everything I do, I also am a mum to 4 kids. And with the first book, I could put it down and pick it up at any time. Nobody was really expecting it in those earlier days, so I could take as long as I needed to do it. Things are a little bit different now because I'm asking other people for their time and I have to work around them.
Mm-hmm.
And, if I've made an appointment, I've got to be there. And the material to a certain extent needs to be handled right away because I don't want to forget. I take notes, but then I also, right after I've gotten off, I sit there and take some more notes about what I think the overall feel of that story was, where it's going, what are the big things that come out, and what am I going to say about this person's experience. So, those things can't wait for me to go and, attend to somebody so I just think just the timing's been a little bit different. It's not as flexible this time. And of course, I have people now who are waiting for the book, and I get a lot of when's it going to be out. And so I feel like there's a little bit more pressure this time to get on with the job and produce it. Last time, you know, I think there was maybe about 3 people that used to regularly message me and say, when's the book going to be out? And now it's a lot more than that. So the demands are a little bit different.
Yeah, it's true. And too, like when you're talking with someone, you don't want to miss the words that they're actually saying, but you have to take the time to catch all the words they aren't saying. There's body language, there's tone of voice, there's the way they're looking at you or the way they're speaking to you on the phone. That, I mean, all these things go into shaping their story.
Yes.
So I imagine you kind of almost have to play sort of, not that you are being a therapist, but you have to be attentive to all those cues to be able to put that into the story to make it full.
Yes, because I start as you do with the set questions, but sometimes the interview goes in a completely different direction, and you've got to go with what's there and not kind of what you expect will be there. And sometimes that takes a bit longer to get through, and then sometimes it takes a bit longer for me to kind of process afterwards. And sometimes I have to go back. Sometimes I think, actually, there was something there and it could have been more, but I kind of missed it, and we kept going. And so sometimes I have to ask somebody, could I just take another half hour to go back and address something that might have been another topic point? So it's just different. It's not really more time. It's just kind of become a lot more structured. And I also finished the large book over COVID lockdown, the very first one, and so there was
nothing else to do.
Yeah, whereas now everything in New Zealand has returned to normal, and so I'm juggling all the usual things, appointments and school runs and all the stuff that, you know, I do every day. So yeah, it's just different challenges.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself going over your notes for an interview or trying to get all the information you can and then finding like a little nugget and having to go back to that person you interviewed and saying, hey, can we talk about this aspect of it? Or do you ever find yourself calling back up someone who you've interviewed and getting more?
That's happened. Yep. Valerie Campbell, who I interviewed quite early, she wrote some answers for me initially, and then the direction.
I'm sorry, in a what? In a what did you say? Valerie Campbell gave you some answers in a what?
Oh, she wrote some answers for me initially and sent them.
Oh.
And they were great, and that was fine. And I thought that would be sufficient. But then once the book changed shape a little bit, and I had that section in the middle where there's these kind of creators, I decided that I needed to come back and talk to Valerie about her ice cream, because her ice cream book and the ice cream parties and everything is something that's personal, but it's come out of Gilmore Girls. So we needed to go back and do a second interview and talk about those. And that wasn't really something that was missed so much as the book changed. I felt like I'd missed a really large part of who Valerie is that initially I didn't think was germane to the project, but then it really was. So yeah, that's definitely happened.
So when you first started writing this book, what did you envision it being like? Because you said a couple times that it sort of changed shape as you interviewed people. So what did your overall vision when you first started getting like the cast interviews and the crew interviews, and then you got some of the fan interviews? How did you envision it going, and how did it change and go a different course?
When I started interviewing cast and crew, I don't really know what I was looking for, because I was very I'd been working with the fan material for a couple of months, and there was definitely themes that were coming out of the fan material that I knew would come together really nicely. But I hadn't really thought about getting cast and crew involved. So it kind of all happened very quickly. And my first interview was with Nick Holmes. And I sort of started asking some generic questions and then kind of just went with where the conversation went. And Nick Holmes said some very specific things about his experience in a very broad way, the ways in which it shaped his life, more than the work, but just kind of how it impacted him. And I think actually that interview with Nick Holmes kind of shaped what I asked everybody from then on, because I think I went into it thinking we would talk about what it was like on the set and what it was like behind the scenes, and how it impacted them professionally in terms of, did they get other jobs out of it, and that kind of thing, or did they get recognized? And Nick Holmes's interview was so personal that I thought, actually, this is more interesting, how the show impacted the people who worked on it in a more personal way. So obviously there's talk about what it was like on the show, but I also want to know what their life was like during the years they were on it. One of the cast members, who I won't say yet because I haven't announced them, was actually about to leave LA because they hadn't been able to find work. They'd been struggling for a long time, and then got the Gilmore Girls gig, and actually ended up meeting the person that they married while they were filming on the show. And so they talked a lot about, if I had just gone home, this marriage wouldn't exist. I wouldn't be in this relationship right now because the person was in LA too. So just those other ways in which being on the show impacted people personally, how it changed their lives in different ways. So I think I sort of have to credit Nick Holmes a little bit for his interview was so wonderful and so rich, and it really got me thinking about what were the important things that people want to hear, because you can find stuff out online about where locations, places where things are filmed at and that kind of thing, but you can't get from people what was the heart of it for you. What are the things that you took away from your time on the show? What are the relationships that you have as a result of the show? And how is your life better because you're on it, and that kind of thing. So that definitely ended up being the shape that all interviews as of then have taken.
And really, that's the reason why people connect with Gilmore Girls, is because that's the very nature of the show. It's all heart, and it's all about connecting with these characters and these storylines. It's real things, but there is a bit of fantastical to it. There is a bit of having them sort of hero worshipped, but there is real true heart in this show, and that's why the audience connects. So I think it was incredibly intuitive of you to pick up on that in these interviews and to change course and say, okay, well, this is not only what we can do with it, but this is going to benefit so many other people by going this route.
Yeah, I think so. And I think because I heard so many things in that first interview that I'd also been reading and hearing in fan experiences, and I thought, there's a connection here that I didn't know would be here. I thought that the cast section would say something very different to the fan section, and actually it doesn't. The fact is that there's the spectrum of people involved on this show, and some were on it and some were watching, but actually we're all feeling the same kinds of things and having the same kind of experiences. And whether you were on it or whether you're watching it, most of us can put our hand up and say that show impacted me personally. So that's really where the heart of the book is coming to, is what the show has done for people, whether it was people that worked on it or people that later watched it.
That's awesome. I love that. I cannot wait for that book to come out. I'm so excited about it.
Oh.
Yeah,
I think I might be just as excited about the heart of the story as I am about the chicken.
Oh yeah.
I can't decide which one I'm more excited about, but they might be equal.
I can't wait. It's going to be great.
Yes. And I'm going to buy that companion book today, because I honestly, God, I didn't know that was there until I was doing a little bit of research on you before I came on here today, because I wanted to be prepared. And so I don't know why I knew the other book existed. I knew that You've Been Gilmored existed, but I don't know why I never knew the companion one existed. So I'm going to have to pick that one up. It's in my Amazon cart right now.
Oh, nice. I don't think I've promoted it as much, really, because I guess I feel like the encyclopedia is something that every Gilmore Girl fan should have. The companion is more for the really die-hard people like me who want to watch all the movies, or devote the next 3 years to reading all the books, or make playlists of the songs and that kind of thing. I feel like there's kind of the book for all fans, and then the group for the subset of people whose life just revolves around the show.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're a diehard fan, you should have both.
Yes, exactly. And my husband likes Gilmore Girls too. He loves it. When I told him we were doing this, he's like, really? I might have to sit in on some of these interviews. So, I mean, we can use the companion as our date night guide. Let's do some of this stuff on date night. That's perfect. It's a win for everybody.
Yeah.
Yes. So you had mentioned that you had an author page and you had written some other books. Is there something other than these, But I'm a Gilmore that's coming out? Is there something else you have coming out that we can be on the watch for, that we can tell all of our viewers and watchers about, that we can let them know?
Nothing major else on the go. Obviously, my PhD thesis is always something I'm working on.
Yeah.
But no, not really. I drop an article every now and then, which goes on to things. We have like a national news website in New Zealand, and earlier this year I wrote an article which went to #1 on that for a little while. But yeah, I guess just follow my author page if you want to know what I'm doing. The little smaller things I always put on there. But my two great loves at the moment, apart from my family, are this book and my PhD.
And I mean, that probably takes up enough time.
Yeah, I think that's plenty for
You're good.
Yeah. Well, Taryn, we want to thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. I like to write too, so I'm not near the level you are, but I consider myself a bit of a writer. So I was really excited about this interview and to pick your brain and talk to you about this stuff and your process. And so thank you so much for coming on and talking with us tonight. We really, really appreciate it. We can't wait to show everybody this video.
Oh no, thanks so much for having me. This has been really fun.
Good. I'm glad. And when that book comes out, we're gonna have you back on, and we're gonna help promote it with you, because we think that every Gilmore girl needs this book. And guy, Gilmore guys are real things.
Yes.
Yep, that'll be good too, because then I can just divulge everything. It'll be out, and we can just we just let it all come out. Yeah.
We'll tease a few things so people are still picking up the book.
Yeah. Great.
Well, thank you so much again, Taryn, and we will be talking to you soon.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.